I should have Rolanda Small joining me in just a moment. Unfortunately, she had a power outage, so she drove to a place where she could log in with us all. And I'm super excited to have this conversation with her with all the things going on in the world and certainly in the US. I feel a little behind on how has the recent legislation change on affirmative action impacted the DEI work going on in corporations. And so I asked Rolanda to join me in this fireside chat so that I could pick her brain and tease out the things that I know I want to know, and hear from her perspective as somebody that's in the corporate space as a DEI leader and very, very connected. So she'll be with us shortly, and I'll entertain us while we're waiting. I wish I could see you all. I wish I could chat with you even. In fact, I think I can if you use the chat. I think I'll see your messages. So do me a favor and let me know where you're located, where you're listening from, I should say. It's always super exciting to hear, and anything that you want to add to this conversation. Um, if you put it in chat, I'm hoping I can see it. And if not, we're learning this platform for the first time. It's new to us, and we'll figure it out for the next one because I darn sure want to hear from you all in chat when I'm speaking. So let's talk about this. Affirmative action has been changed. Our rights for reproductive has been changed, and both of those changes are to the negative. And there's so much more within those changes that affect corporate America. And it was super interesting to me, which is why I thought about calling Rolanda to have this conversation. It was super interesting to me to stumble upon how many jobs are open for DEI leaders right now. It was fascinating to see just under 900,000 of these jobs open. And I couldn't help but think to myself, what's that all about? I mean, I've certainly heard over the years that DEI leaders aren't being retained and are finding that each organization is going through these leaders possibly at 12 months intervals. And so I've heard that in the past, and yet I'm super shocked to see how many jobs are posted. And so, maybe something we can do in chat while we wait for Rolanda too is to talk about, uh, you know, does your company have a DEI leader? And if so, how's it going? How is the culture better for it? I would hope so. And yet, why are they moving jobs so often? Why are there so many jobs open? What is even the job? That's what I really want to ask Rolanda. I mean, like cybersecurity, it's so vast to say DEI leader and to bring, diversity, equity, and inclusion into a company. Well, certainly one person alone isn't enough, right? It's programs and trainings. And I know from my own experience in making sure that all genders work well together, that we focused and still do constantly on emotional intelligence skills, which really create behaviors. Our personality is created of our IQ and our EQ, and together, the two of them make our personality. And if we don't have strong high IQ, or excuse me, EQ, then most likely our behaviors will be discriminatory, and whether it be the conscious or the unconscious mind making those choices. And so I think about the programs that are needed. I know for me, it will, it started with the framework of Myers-Briggs and situational leadership, where those two programs were eye-opening to me in my early 30s, now 20 something years later. And then adding the sales training that I was given, that's how I came into tech and into cyber, was through sales, which says, you got to have win-win communication, which means helping everybody get what they want. And even if they didn't get what they want, to feel good about not getting what they wanted. And that comes through transparency, honesty, and fair business programs. And so, with win-win communication, if we have measurable and uh, agreements, that if we can make measurable agreements and have win-win communication, and which is why this is skills training, right? Super skills training. And the language, verbal, written, body, that provides equality, mental safety for everybody. When we put those three things together, we can have equity, which then creates inclusion, which then creates diversity. And so when I think about these, organizations and their DEI programs, and uh, again, having not worked at an organization having a DEI program other than my own, it's to say, how does it even work when you have, hundreds and thousands of people? What is that program? And, you know, what programs are working, which ones aren't working? Because to me, this is our only shot. Our only shot is education. And it isn't education of why. I think we're past that. I think it's education of how. And that's why I really love focusing on language. And I'm okay with having rules on language. In my firm, we even have rules of not using words like the word but in a sentence, because if you use the word but in a sentence, you just negated what you said before the word but. So you're not speaking truth. So put a period or put an and those are simpler things than words that are discriminatory, degrading, turn people off, which is what words do. In fact, I'm so lucky to have the training that I had. I learned in my early 20s that when I got into management, that I had the power to turn on and off people because I was their manager, and how serious I needed to take that. And that is my words, my actions, my behavior, my treatment of them dictates their success more than their own in most cases. And so those are the things I'm going to pull out of Rolanda. I think she's found herself situated somewhere and she's going to join us here. But again, feel free to share your stories in chat. I'm getting shared some of them here by our lovely moderators behind the scene, because I can't see you, and yet they're sharing them in the private chat. And you know, I just can't stress enough how, if we truly come from love, that means we're willing to externalize our internal dialogue. And so, while we're out there dealing with other humans and fighting for our rights and fighting for DEI initiatives in organizations, to remember to speak your mind. It's through speaking our mind that we propel and we gain traction. And while it is difficult and scary, it really will empower us all to use our voices. And when I learned that love was the willingness to confront, meaning, like, it's not about confront, yell, scream, call people names. It's about confronting and sharing what we're thinking, is what I mean by confront. Meaning, if we don't share what we're thinking, that means we're not communicating. We've taken our ball, we're going home, or we're done with that person or that conversation. That goes nowhere but bad. It goes nowhere but hurt feelings or negative feelings, um, and it usually ends up in, you know, yucky karma even. So I really believe that, as hard as it can be, and I struggle at times with this greatly too, as hard as it can be to tell somebody what you're thinking and feeling, it is truly love to do so. Because it's only through communication that we can work out differences and challenges. And it's only through communication that we can continue to, find ways to remind ourselves that this is another human and that every human wants to be treated the same way. And so when we can bring ourselves to communicating, usually we can get ourselves closer to the emotion of empathy, to the emotion of acceptance and tolerance and willingness to compromise our own desires and wants so that equality and equity can happen. And so if there's anything that I want to make sure I leave an imprint on us all, is this this sentence of being willing to externalize our internal dialogue. It is true freedom. And this is at work and at home and with every relationship in our lives. It's certainly going to come with small mistakes. What are mistakes other than experiences? I think there's a lot of words that we've created for ourselves in society that are hold us back. I think a mistake is one of them. I don't wanna make a mistake. I'm afraid to make a mistake. Well, what is a mistake other than an experience? And if we're making mistakes that are unintentional and aren't physically, or mentally harming someone, then that mistake is really truly just experiencing speaking. And even if you got a situation wrong, you can get accountable to that and find that you're better off having said it than not, because you're engaging in a way that will really impact your conscious mind to get better and better at how you communicate. And so I truly, truly encourage us all to make sure that every time we hear that voice that says, I probably shouldn't, I don't want to say that. What if they take it wrong? What if they get mad? What if they get upset? All those things that we all think of that cause us not to say what we're thinking. It's really not a powerful voice to listen to. And I would encourage you to run into that fear, to embrace that fear, and use that fear to power yourself forward. It's when we don't move forward that we don't live our most powerful lives, meaning even in speech, even in the words that are in our brains, moving it forward, getting it out. Like, get it out. It's not good to stuff it in or to hold it in. It's the act of forward motion truly is the act of forwardness. So when we hold in, when we keep fear giving us, power to move backwards, that's what it is, right? If the fear is stopping us from speaking, then it's a back motion because the words come out. So, those types of thoughts have helped me so much in my career in how to speak to people um, is a skill. Like how to speak to people and turn them on versus turn them off. All day, I still practice this, no matter who I'm talking to. It means I need to be thinking about how they think, feel, and perceive before I talk to them. And so, when I think about all these DEI programs, and I'm seeing in chat that, that Rolanda and Kelly are working out some tech issues, and that hopefully she'll be joining us soon. When I think about these DEI programs, and I'm super uneducated as to really what they are, I can't help but think of just how challenging it is to teach hundreds and thousands of people at one time how to think about their feelings, how to think about how others feel, perceive, and then turn all of those feelings into a language that creates equity, into a system that creates equity, because as we know, if there isn't fair promotion criteria, transparency to promotion criteria, then we're not going to have equity. And so, I'm super, passionate about this topic because we've got training to do to all genders in communication to have equity. And these programs um, are just something we need to unpack. So I see Rolanda's got a black screen here, but Rolanda, can you hear us? Maybe. No, not yet. Try clicking your camera recording logo button. Somebody said. Uh, the challenges of a new platform, and actually more of a challenge of, I think, Rolanda's home network went out, home provider literally went out, so she's at somewhere else. Um, so I'm just going to keep talking. I'm sure she'll get her camera permissions, set up here in a second, and to continue to lay up this conversation in depth of like the knowledge I want to know is what the heck's working. I know that when I teach genders, and the dominant gender loves the teaching of emotional intelligence too. I mean, shoot, look at what's happening in cybersecurity for those people. They're changing jobs, meaning men, white men, are changing jobs in cybersecurity at the C level every 18 months. That means that 8 months in, they're job searching because it takes a year, literally, for the C suite to find a role. That's how broken job matching and searching is. And so, if that's happening for them, and I don't blame them, I get all the reasons. Uh, it just goes to show that we have so much work to do in how we make agreements and in employment, and how we engage each other at work. I recently started an activist group of security leaders, and myself will be announcing who everybody is in the new year, or maybe earlier, to create a compliance control for retaining cyber talent. And I thought of this idea because for years and years and years, I've been out there talking about this problem of retaining cybersecurity talent as a national security issue. And I've just found that the needle isn't moving. There isn't budget for succession planning. There isn't budget for the type of training that security professionals need, and I'm sick of talking about it. And so wisdom has showed me that only money and laws change behaviors. And so I thought, well, we need a compliance control, so we're starting, of course, with a risk framework. If airline pilots can't sit in their seat legally longer than 9 hours and can't fly longer than 8, then what does a security operations professional's life look like in terms of how many hours they're sitting in their seat, and how many hours is too many where they're less productive, vulnerable themselves? I think that has to be unpacked, and it certainly is many types of roles in cybersecurity. At the end of the day, cybersecurity professionals are emergency workers, they're protectors, they are, uh, 24/7 on and have very few wins and lots of losses every day and dealing with um, opposition of internally, externally, more attackers than defenders, knowledge internally, challenging where, vulnerabilities come from. I mean, it's an emergency work and yet has no governance around hours of operation, no governance around training and development, no governance around, time off to recharge. These are things that happen for other, uh, you know, uh, uh, social servants, emergency workers, people who operate machinery or technology that is critical to life. Cybersecurity is in that bucket. In fact, it is, also where national and world disasters can come from and do come from. So we need to we need to understand what equity looks like. We need to understand what inclusion looks like, even beyond gender, race, and socioeconomic status in terms of caring for our workers. And when I think about those DEI programs, and it looks like we've got still some troubleshooting going on, and hopefully we'll get at least 30 minutes with Rolanda. When I think about those DEI programs again, wow, what a what a huge task to take on. It really is something so complex that I can't imagine it not having the challenges that I believe these departments are having based on the 10-year challenge, based on the amount of jobs posted. I mean, I know job searching and matching is broken, and yet to have over 800,000, just under 900,000 jobs open, it was fascinating. It's something I think that maybe needs to be brought to the broader, uh, community to help think of solutions. Because my gut says we're working probably on some pretty small, minor frameworks. And those frameworks may or may not be moving the needle. We're going to hear from Rolanda. I don't believe they are. And I only say that because legislation has gone backwards, and legislation is a representation of powerful companies. And if powerful companies want legislation and powerful people want legislation to go backwards for women, well, that's going to trickle down into the office without a doubt. There's there's no way it doesn't. As we know, the term, what, rolls downhill. Well, that's exactly the term. And um, I know it. I saw it this year in sponsorships, in sponsoring this conference. Totally different this year, which is why earlier when I was kicking things off, I was sharing that these sponsors, this conference are super special because, most of the conversations were met with not right now. We're trying, to figure things out. Economic climate. It's like, economic climate. Like I don't blame the individuals we're talking to. These things come from the top, but economic climate. So we're only going to invest in women and underrepresented cultures if we're making tons of money. That's the message. That's the message I heard. That's the message that got me super not happy, pushed me from ally to activist, pushed me because I'm sick of words versus true behavior of wanting to make change. And so I can't stress enough how ridiculous it is to say that, oh, I can't spare 1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, depending on what organization I am. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that that is met with, we're in an economic downturn or we're experiencing economic challenges. What? Capitalism is that. Capitalism is a constant win and lose, and markets are going to go up and they're going to go down. But if we truly care about this cause, what is a couple $1,000s? Something, not nothing. It isn't all or nothing the way that we ought to all participate in this conversation. It's every little thing that we do or money that we give, it's adds up. So I just thought to myself this year, really, that's the message from the top. The message is not right now. We're having a tough time and we're big companies. I don't no bueno, as I like to say a lot. That doesn't work for me. And therefore being an activist is the next step. And being an activist for me, because it looks like we're still still struggling, but hopefully we'll have this worked out shortly. But what's the difference between being an ally and an activist? Let's talk about that for a minute, because when I think about DEI programs, and I also heard at RSA last year that people were saying, no more allies, we need co-conspirators. And I thought that was brilliant. And that's really what an activist is for me. It's that co-conspirator means, it's not the willingness to stand up. It's literally standing up every day for this conversation, never taking the back seat, not letting one incident go unaddressed, powerfully positive behavior, addressing it is my point. Um, and creating laws. And when Rolanda joins us, and I'm sure they'll figure it out, this is what we have to own: laws. And voting is certainly a part of laws, and also creating laws, lobbying, uh, creating laws in our own organization, meaning rules of behavior. This is where we all have to get involved. I often find myself talking about words, and one of the words that I talk about a lot that I think is harmful to society is this word politics. And how people say, I don't want to talk politics, or I'm not educated enough on politics, and I don't want to I'm just not into politics. And what I would say to people is, and I would like us all to say, that means you don't care, or you're unknowledgeable about the laws that govern everything you can do and I can do, meaning whoever you are and whoever I am. That's what politics is. So if if we want to say, I don't want to talk politics, and I don't understand politics, that's just not okay for me. It's just not. I don't want that. I want us all to know the laws that govern your body, the laws that govern your rights at work, outside of work. That's politics. It's laws. And laws really impact people's lives. Our prisons are full of brown and black people being persecuted for laws that white people, break all the time and don't ever see a day in prison. I mean, it's maddening. And so we cannot hide under this dumb word of politics as if it's something that's so vast and unobtainable to understand. It's not. It's laws. And I encourage us all to get out of sides and teams and what team we're on, and start understanding laws. Start understanding what they are. and speak about that because that's what's important. Do you believe in the law? If you believe in that law, then you fight to keep it. If you don't believe in the law, then you fight to change it. And that's it. And voting's only one piece of that. The other piece is getting everybody on the same page about what the laws are and stop having these high level, superficial conversations that have no meaning, literally. All that matters is what's the law. That's it. And whatever that law is, how does it impact human rights? And when I think about women's rights, I can't think, leave out human rights, meaning the rights that I want are the rights I want for every human. And therefore, being an activist to me means getting involved with law that impacts behavior, because it seems to be that only laws and money move the needle. And what I mean by money is this: fines. Fines. That's what I mean about money. Meaning, uh, when I remember selling, vulnerability management software for Rapid7 as the first VP of sales and building that company to 50 million. And it was pre PCI, and it was certainly when I first started, pre fining for PCI. That when PCI started fining, everybody started buying vulnerability management. But prior to that, for 2 years, myself and an army were out there educating people on why they needed to not use just open source products and buy a solution. And I mean, we were talking to water plants, energy organizations, we were talking to every single company in the United States in my day. And moving that needle and convincing people to buy the product, you know what worked? It wasn't security as much as it was the reporting. And even that was, 1 out of 20 people we'd talked to cared and was willing to invest in better reporting. And this was the early days. But sure as heck, as soon as fining started, PCI started causing everybody to buy vulnerability management software. So, because of that, because I know affirmative action is what got women into powerful seats, because I know that without my, voting rights, none of this would happen. I have learned laws and fines for not abiding by laws are the only thing that move the needle. And so that's where I will focus and encourage others to focus. And while doing so, I think that we're all going to uncover laws that we were unaware of or unclear about. And so I really encourage us all to get the word politics out of our life. It's been weaponized by media and by administrations to keep us all uneducated about what's really going on. Well, what's really going on and all that matters are what laws are in place, what laws are up to bat to replace those laws, to change those laws, and what new laws are up to bat to get passed. And those are federal laws as well as your state and local government city laws. We need to know all of those laws such that we can be educated to understand what we want changed, to what we want added, and to be in dialogue with other humans about what's going on. To have conversations that don't get clouded in emotions and negative energy. I have found that when I speak and only speak about the laws with people, it's a totally different conversation. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, "Oh, I didn't know that was the law." You know? Uh, so this is where we must spend our time educating. These are the types of conversations I'm gonna keep bringing to our community and giving the stage to other leaders who have the SME knowledge on this, because it's a job in itself. you know, to consume this information is a ton of research, meaning to really understand the laws. So I figure let's get the SMEs on stage, and by doing so, we can get these laws front and center, and start really looking at them and helping the masses understand what they are, because once we do that, the masses will be behind us too. It's quite fascinating to see how many men don't really know a lot of our challenges. They are allies and they would be activists if we could empower them to understand the behaviors that we face, and also to understand, ooh la la, the laws that are going on there. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Wow. OMG.
If we don't give up, we succeed. I love you for not
Wow.
giving up, my friend. I
Oh
love
my
you for
goodness,
not
my
giving
goodness, my goodness. I had an idea after Epiphany, after a couple of back end stuff, but thank you. I am so, so sorry about all of this. I want to catch up on the conversation because I know you've been talking and chatting and having good stuff going on with all the whole the group. So I'm just thrilled to be here. Rolanda Small, head up DEI for Proofpoint, and I am just so excited to talk about this topic. So let's jump in since we're already halfway through, and I want to hear from all of you. So let's do this.
love it. I think
Yeah.
Kelly's gonna bring up slides, but,
Yes, let's bring it up, but I wanna
yep.
jump in wherever you are, and I'll talk a little bit about what you've talked about. Go to the next slide, Kelly, let's just continue and jump through this. So,
Woo! I love
I love this. I love this. So I know you all talked about the fact that we've had
it.
some crazy legislation that has taken place, things that we have worked on for, people have especially in this country in the US who have been dealing with so many laws that we finally got passed to help us move things forward. And then after 100 years, guess what? We got to take some steps back, which is not uncommon and not unusual. But hey,
It's
after
horrible.
100 years, yeah, let's
It's
start taking
horrible.
back. It's horrible.
It
It's
was
horrible.
it literally was like a punch in my face, my stomach,
Slap
it's
you around
still,
a few times.
yeah,
Yes.
I still don't even believe it happened. Do you know? I think a lot
Yes.
of us feel that way, that did it really happen? It's like, so
And the
yeah,
worst part about it is we wouldn't feel so bad about it happening if it wasn't needed anymore. Now
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
key. That's
yeah,
the key. We
yeah,
wouldn't care if after 100 years that they took away, Roe versus Wade and the protections for abortion rights. We wouldn't care that they took away, this conscious admissions programs and stuff that helped for minorities in upper learning. We wouldn't have cared one bit if we already were at that place where we know we had representation in all of these areas, if we had continuously having, being able to go into organizations, going into schools and see the representation of what it really looks like in our own population. But
yeah,
that's not the case. That's what made it feel like a gut punch. That's
yeah,
exactly what made it hurt so badly. So
yeah,
that's, oh,
yeah.
just so, so sorry about that. But even worse than that, if you really take a moment and think about these things, really, they're facts. They did happen, but they shouldn't have any bearing on, implications for business. They really shouldn't.
They shouldn't, and they do though, right? And this is what we've got
Yes.
to, I can't wait to hear you share
Yes,
these.
yes. So let's go on to the next slide because we know the facts. We know what happened, but we were trying to figure out what is it that we are seeing since this has occurred. And I think this is the part I want us to dig into and talk a little bit more about is what are corporations, what am I seeing and what are corporations doing? Both what are we seeing in the US and also where is this bleeding into other things that we're seeing globally? So for me personally, and I talk to a lot of my colleagues and friends that I know in the industry, other DEIB specialists and leaders, and we're starting to see this chilling effect. That's what we're kind of calling it. It's calling the chilling effect. And really, businesses are growing concerned
Yeah.
about the lawsuits that they saw that happened that are already starting to, really plague the universities and the schools, but now starting to bleed into organizations where they're worried about the programming and the way they've written their initiatives and set their goals. And so that's what we're starting to see is that some of these organizations are saying, hmm, maybe we need to change up a little bit about our programs. Maybe we can't really lean into that diversity piece. Maybe we need to just kind of veer away from that. It's making us uncomfortable. We're not sure what to do around our hiring practices and our initiatives. So, let's maybe just take it slow. Maybe let's actually pause, which is what a lot of them are doing, is kind of taking that pause. Definitely refraining from setting targets and baseline goals. That's what I'm hearing the most is like, well, we can't really make targets anymore. That's something we can't, we can't reach for. Um,
Oh my gosh. So
Definitely hearing that all over.
are you saying that because of the fear of being sued, because legislation changed to say affirmative action no longer do you have to care about how many women or diverse people you have in your organization. The law, federal law, says that you don't have to care. And so that fear of being sued is making organizations pause. And some of them, I would imagine, celebrating, because we know there are people out there that believe that women are not as equal, right? What does
Mhm.
Mike Pence say? I won't be alone with a woman that works for me in a room. Oh, great! That's it. That says it all,
That
right?
just
So
has to make you chuckle. You just
oh,
kind of have to sit back. And I
it
think the
makes me
toughest part for me is we're in this place. You have some organizations who were on the fence in the first place or kind of doing surface work. For them, this kind of gives them a little bit of a relief. They feel like, well, we can save those dollars, we can save the resources and the time. We'll just lean on the fact that all these changes happening and that'll be our excuse for why we don't do this work. But the ones that make me more concerned are the ones that are having this chilling effect, and the ones that are taking this pause are some of the ones that actually were doing quite a bit of work trying to make a change in their organization. And that's the part that saddens me. Right after George Floyd, most organizations, the percentage of DEI leaders that were added to organizations, programs, and initiatives that were added in went up by 168% across tech companies. And that is huge. We need to continue to see that growth.
yes.
But that happened right after the George Floyd event where everybody saw the disparity.
Yes.
Everybody saw things in their own eyes. And so they said, okay, we can't act like we didn't see it. We didn't can't act like we don't know about this. It's in our face. We have to do something. And in our own organizations, they're not reflective of this disparity that we know is happening in society. So let's go ahead and start doing some great work here. And
Yeah.
then they started moving forward. We started seeing progress, companies really putting the strong efforts there. And this is the part that makes me sad about this overturned legislation. It's now causing or some organizations to just, oh wait, let me take a step back. We've seen it in organizations like Amazon and some of the big ones that actually were doing great, great, great work. And that makes me concerned.
Yeah.
Not that they had cracked the nut, because that definitely hasn't been the case, but they were taking steps in the right direction. Globally, what we're also starting to see is that this is starting to be in direct conflict with some of the country laws that were in the works or being passed. And a lot of them were really heavily focused even on gender. And so we were starting to see progress there where other countries were really willing to start putting things in place, holding corporations, even if they were headquartered in the US, if they had a representation in other countries, especially in Europe, across Europe, if they had if they had offices there, they were starting to hold those organizations to a place where they were able to, they have to show over a 3-year, 2 to 3 year plan that they've built this in, that their talent pool in those particular countries had was representative of, at least what was available in the market from those particular countries, and they were holding them accountable. Was going to actually fine companies if they did not hold true to their plans. And so we were starting to see, wow, not just women, and they were making them. They were actually, these laws are across all levels. So we're not just talking about, you can't just have all the secretaries be all women. You have to have, if you have sales organizations, you got to have women in your sales functions all the way up to the executive level. So we were seeing countries getting on board after all of this stuff and really saying we got to do better and we got to do more, and they were moving along. And these changes are now having countries kind of go, oh, okay, well, we're not sure, we've already put this in place, we've are holding people to it, we want to continue to move things forward, but it's kind of muting a response from everyone. It's kind of having them to take that approach that's kind of like, let's just stop and let's give no reaction because we don't know what to do, you know?
It's so disheartening. I have a question. What does that mean for DEI leaders like yourself and your peers? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? You have a job, and what is the job then?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things. It's here you see what they're starting to do is question the pool of talent being produced from universities and a post-affirmative action workforce. What does that look like? And then also here in the States, especially, you're hearing a lot of rumbling of people saying, "Will I even have a job for, this type of work if there's nothing for me to do in these organizations?" So Kelly, can we jump to the next slide? Let's just talk about what advice and what I would like to share with all of you, and what things I like to see us doing a little bit more about this concerns and these issues is, I want, first of all, everybody to kind of stay calm and just take that moment and breathe through this. This is not the first time. I've been doing this work for over 20 years, and this is not the first time where we've had these gut punches. I've always told people who decide to go into this field that you got to be ready to take, you got to be able to run fast, but be ready to absorb that pushback, because
I
you might take 2 steps, 3 steps forward, but you might get pushed back 4. That doesn't mean that you didn't go back 4 steps. You only went back really one, a net one. So you got to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. So take that first pause and realize that this work is hard work. We're going against people's values. Some people have been brought up where their value system is that women don't have a place in the workforce. They don't have, minorities don't really have a same level of place for them to be, in some of these organizations. And so for some people, all this work, no matter whether the legislation is there or not, it's still going against their value system, and it's always going to be a push and a pull. So just take a pause there and just stay calm so that we don't lose sight of where we're going. The other thing, I ask people to stay grounded. Keep programming and initiatives rooted, with that genuine respect based on the desire to understand one another. If we always go back to that. If you really think about it, even if you looked at every religion in the world, people always go, but my religion this, my religion that. The reality is, if you go to the baseline of every religion, there's some core to every
Right.
single one of them. Every one of them. I don't care what you call it. I don't care where you pray. I don't care what book you read. The reality is there's a core. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking people in this work and in this field, people who are passionate and who are dedicated to being an ally and seeing this change, is to stay rooted in making sure that we all have genuine respect that's based on true understanding of one another. If we do that, that's going to help us do so much. Everything you do at the job, every initiative you put in place, every conversation you have with the leader, doesn't ever, you could even drop the word diversity, because the reality is that we all are diverse. But if we can continue to open that door to make sure that our uniqueness, our differences are what we're bringing to the forefront, and we allow space and room for us to be different, that's what's going to be able to help take us forward. So what they call it, let's not get hung up on that. Let's stay grounded and rooted in what's most important, is what we're trying to achieve, is that there's space for everyone, that we all can make space for one another to
Yeah.
be able to be truly, 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 ourselves, bring everything that we have in our experiences in our lives and who we are, our makeup, even from our race and our religion, all of that to the table, because it does help us think differently. I grew up My mother is disabled. She has MS and is in a wheelchair and has been for I always laugh because my oldest daughter is going to be she's 32 and she says I've never seen grandmother outside of a wheelchair or scooter or anything. She's like I've never and I'm like and it makes me think because I knew my mother before that, but
Right.
she's never seen her ever outside of that. So majority of her life. So I see things also from the perspective of someone from a chair.
Yeah.
That's how I navigate the world, and it's different. And
Yeah.
this is what I mean when someone might look at you and only think one thing. They might look at your race, they might look at your gender, but the reality is we all bring such a different perspective. And if we can lean into that to take time to understand one another and allow those experiences to come to the table, it's going to help us to further how we work with one another, how we support and take these organizations to the next level, as well as how we bring our creative thoughts to the table for better solutions and processes and tools that we serve for the overall customers that we are serving in these companies.
Yeah.
Uh,
I really appreciate you, talking about the stay calm because, calm doesn't mean not active, not,
mm-mm.
pushing and fighting. Calm means think about what you're saying. Calm means pay attention. This is the most critical time to think about the words we're using and
Yes.
diversity is now become a
A
bad
trigger word.
word.
Yes.
Yeah, then use another word. I love that. I was just
Yes.
talking about that, like I used to talk about, communication skills, soft skills, and people hated soft skills in tech, so I changed it to EQ 9 years ago, and now
Yes.
that's everybody uses it. So what's the word words we should be using then,
Yes. Yes.
is what we got to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And fighting can be calm.
And fighting can be calm, and I think that sometimes when we get too excited about it and we don't remember to stay in that calm space, think and thoughtful, it doesn't allow us to meet people where they are. Because that's where you rather
Yeah.
than becoming making them become defensive, if we
Yeah.
can keep that, that's what helps move things forward. Yeah, I think you're spot on. That is the key. Stay calm, make sure we're listening, because when you're calm, you listen better too. That's the
Yeah.
other thing. We
Yeah.
listen so much better. We can better understand where our legal departments are going and what they're concerned about. We can hear from our executives. We can read through when we see some of these weird, bogus lawsuits that are coming to the forefront. We can understand and dissect that a little bit better so that we can function in a way that is going to still help people hear where we want to go and what we need to do and help them to get on board. And so I think that's the critical piece. And I think that's what, for me, what I've learned over these 20 years is don't get so just kind of bent out of shape because of the legislation to the point where I miss focus on where we're going.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would just say stay focused because there are critical things we can do. Voting, there were also I look back and I read over some of the when the law came to the Supreme Court, where Harvard and the other schools were there bringing forth why they have these programs and what they're doing. You had places like General Electric, you had Apple, you had Starbucks, you had other organizations who wrote letters, who took time to go in there and support and provide letters and show that there is a reason these universities need to do this, because there is disparity in these inside of these universities. We're not seeing people graduating at the same levels that we should, and in order for us as employers, as leaders in DEI space, to be able to help these employers to make sure that they're able to bring a diverse talent pool to each of these organizations, we have to lean in and help them. Those universities were doing what they thought were the right things to ensure that they were keeping some balance that would then be able to in the future feed our talent pools. And being that we have such a shortage in cybersecurity, especially, wow, we need this. We need to
Yeah.
see this. And
Yes.
so stay focused on those types of things. Think about what you can do. Lean into where you can have the most effect, positive effect in terms of moving things forward. Rome was not built in a day, and we are not going to solve this overnight. I remember one time sitting with an executive, a CPO that I had from a couple companies back, and I sat down and they were like, "Well, why can't we just solve this?" And I thought to myself, "Well, like, it's so easy. We should just do this, this, and this." And I was like, and I remember my response was, if I had the answer to that, I would be sitting on my couch with my Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's really bigger. It sounds easy. It's not easy. We're
Yeah.
uniquely wired. We all see the world differently. And so, what this really is about is us continuing to be open to one another and
Yeah.
not take our differences as a dig, as or as something that is a negative to the next person. It's really about us just being different.
Yeah.
And leaning.
Yeah. I have a question for you on that, as people thinking it's so easy, I'm the opposite, thinking as we are waiting for you, I'm thinking to myself, how do you I've only, been at the top of an organization of 500 people. That's the largest I've gotten to. Um, and 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 to keep behavior, that's what we're talking about. To keep behavior the way we want it, which
Yeah,
behavior is how we interact with each other, how we
yeah,
interact with our clients,
yep.
how we communicate. That's what really everybody is paying attention to. And yet, how the heck do you get hundreds, thousands of people to
Hmm.
behave and in a world economy, like, let's not forget some countries are definitely more sophisticated than us in how they treat underrepresented genders and others are not.
Yeah,
And so how the heck do we get a universal behavior about how we treat each other? And how does a company use laws to make that happen? I mean, it's complex. And yet
it's
we
super
can put
complex.
people on the moon. I can talk to you and we're not even in the same part of the country. We can do all these things that, seem impossible.
Hmm.
And so we can do this, and yet it seems to require behavioral rules.
Yes.
And nobody
Yeah,
wants that. Nobody wants to touch that, right?
it's behavioral rules, but I think the thing is that everyone is believing that every organization or every leader is expecting them to have the same value system and have the same values as each person. But that's not the reality. The reality is that we need to be able to ensure that we have an environment in every one of these organizations, and as we work together, an environment that allows you to have your values, me to have my values, and for them to be able to coexist. That's it. It's not about managing your values or rules. Or putting you under some rules where you feel like you are stifled in your values. That's not it. It's about building that environment, and it's hard, especially like you talked about. In small companies, it's a little easier. You get to talking to people, you get to understand, oh, there's this space that you can kind of ebb and flow. As you grow, it becomes harder and harder because every time you turn around, you are hiring new people in. Sometimes companies, hundreds at a time are bringing in new people. So you always have to go back to that baseline about what this company values and what they stand for. And the standing for an environment of openness, an environment of making that space and respecting the fact that your values may be different than mine, but yet we can still be working towards a common goal. That's the critical piece. And being able to have those kind of open conversations and respect for one another, so that way our value systems, we hold them to a place where they don't get in the way of each other and our ability to interact and do the best work we can do together as colleagues.
Yeah. I think I'm sitting here thinking to myself as you're talking, what are values? Like what are, because, what are the values that one person could have that would make them enact behavior that isn't equitable, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you think about it, I mean, some values that people hold are driven by their religion. Some values that people hold are driven by their upbringing. So, what they have been told to be their truth from their parents, from their priest, their rabbi, um, from their schooling. There's a number of different things that then people use to guide what they feel is important to them and what they were going to stand for. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think that we all have to have something that we have faith in, that we feel that we are connected to and that help give us our purpose. That's okay. I think the reality is as though you have to allow the fact that Deidre, you were raised in a different way than I was. So you may feel differently than me, but how do you and I sit together? How do we still work in a way that when if I told you that I am from the LGBTQIA community and that I have a wife or a husband and I have this or I have that and if I tell you those things but then you're in opposition of that based on your own value system, how do you sit next to me and how can we still talk about those things openly so I don't have to hide my family? I don't have to hide who I am. You don't have to feel then like you have to rebuke my family. How do we sit in a way where then we can sit next to one another? You still can hear what offerings I have and what knowledge and information that might help us go forward. And I can be receptive to anything that you may share as well, even though your value system is in opposition to what I have in my own value system. That's the key. We have to be able to get open enough to where I still can be me. I still can talk about those things. You still can be you. You can talk about them, but then we can mesh together and still say, hey, I learned this maybe at a pride parade. I might have learned that. You might have learned something else at your church. How do we then bring those things together and maybe solve for something incredible?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't help but think about, you know, somebody, to use your example, being anti LGBTQ, which means anti willing to let somebody love whoever they want to love,
Mhm.
which is again where I think the conversation sits, and and to still do business with them or do life with them while they still are anti who I can love or somebody can love is, interesting to me. I don't know that I've ever really been in that situation where I shouldn't say that. Of course, I have in a business perspective, but we're not talking about it. I don't know that
Yeah.
they are. But if the conversation came up, would the business still continue? I don't know, and I wonder, and I just see so many challenges there.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. It's one of those things that some people can't let go.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I think that us as DEI leaders, one of the things we try to help individuals be able to manage through. I think that is the toughest part is for them to be able to understand that you can still have your whole I'm not trying to change you. I'm not going to sit here and beat you with my value system until you change. Instead, I want you to hold to that and feel comfortable with it and know that if you express anything that relates to that, as long as you're not demeaning me,
Yeah.
then we're okay.
Yeah, like, you don't have to change your beliefs, you have to treat me as an equal.
You have to treat me as an equal. That's it.
That's what we have to be saying. You can have your beliefs, just also have to treat as an equal. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And what I hope would come about from that is that what people will realize is over time is that their belief system can somewhat open up if you start to interact with other people. People believe though that if they hang around people who are not like them too long, that then they're going to continue to start trying to make them change into who they are. Not necessarily. They may want you to hear their perspective. They may want you to understand why it's important to them, but most people are not going to try to force you into their beliefs. They are just going to say, "Okay, let's agree to disagree, but I want to have make sure you feel respected enough to be able to speak up." That's like if you're having a meeting at work and you are in the meeting and, three people are vegan, but yet they're, bringing in, we're going to a Brazilian steakhouse. Like there should be you don't have to change this person's desire to not be vegan, but you got to respect the fact that they need to eat. And it's going to
right.
be and we need to be able to find a way that they can get some nourishment. So that's what
Mhm.
if we just kind of simplify it down, it can definitely be something that we can manage through. For some reason, people can still figure out how to be friends with vegans. You can be friends with a meat eater and you guys still all can be friends. So
Yeah,
it's the same type of thing. We just got to make room for each other.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think if that's the path of least resistance, then let's do it,
Then let's do
like,
it.
you can dislike my, what who I choose to love or what I choose to eat or, how I look,
Yes.
and yet you cannot treat me differently than how you want to be treated.
And that's the root. That's it. Always put yourself in that person's shoes and how you want to be treated. And just with that, I guarantee you, you will come with the best heart. You will be able to sit in that room, even if it's hard, and you'll be able to open yourself up and have those conversations. So that's what I ask of folks.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. I think we're done.
Alrighty.
Said the talk cut off on us.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
no worries. We're good. We got